Hi, welcome to my review on the graphs of cosine and sine theta. And as in previous reviews, this review can be treated as a quiz where the total of this one is marked at a 31. And when you get all your questions done, your marks done on each page, you add up your pages, total on the bottom of each page, put it over 31, divide 31 into the numerator, get a decimal, move it 2 places to the right to get your percent, how well you know how to graph cosine and sine. Let's start. Graph x equals cos theta over the interval 0 less than or equal to theta less than or equal to 360. So we're graphing theta, so this is the degrees on this, it's called theta. Now we can put x here, or we can put cos theta here. Most would put y here, but technically speaking, it is not the y, but even though they do it. So this is the value as a result of working out the cos of theta. So we're putting a 0 in. And before we start, let's draw this circle, this is the circle, which is a radius. It has a radius of 1. So that means this point right here is 1, 0. This point here is 0, 1. And this one right here is negative 1, 0. And this one is 0, negative 1. So this is a radius of 1, so the distance a little bit not straight here, so let's make it a little bit straighter. The center is 0, 0. So this is the circle I will use. So this is 0 degrees. This is 90 degrees right here. This is 180. This is 270. And if you go back this way, this is the negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360. So all the way around is 360. So the cos is the x. Cos is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, but we learned that the cos is, and sine, cos is the x and sine is the y. So we're looking for cos theta on the rotation, so is the x. So 0 degrees, cos is 1. So let's plot that point. And we rotate to 90. 90, the cos of 90 is, and before I do that, sorry, this is 360. So this is 180. And this is 90. And this is 270, split up into 4 equal segments. So when we rotate from here up to 90, cos is 0. So 90 gives us a 0. And when we rotate to 180, cos is negative 1. So 180 gives me negative 1. When we go to 270, cos is 0. So we're back to here. 270 gives me a 0. And right around 360, cos is 1. So we're right back to where we started. So 360 gives us a 1. So there's the graph that represents the interval from 0 to 360. And notice the cos begins with a C. So this graph is a sideways C. It's like this, sideways C. And if you got each of those done right, give yourself 5 marks. And graph y equals sine theta over the interval of 0 less than or equal to theta less than or equal to 360. Again, this is 360. So this is 180 in the middle. This is 90 to the left and 270. So they're intervals of 90 degrees each. And this is theta. And again, now this is y, or you could say it's the sine of theta. So up here, cos is x, sine is the y. That's true because we're on the unit circle. And so 0 degrees, so when we're at 0 degree rotation, the y is 0, which is right here. When we rotate to 90, the y is 1. So 90 gives us a 1. When we rotate to 180, sine is the y, which is 0. So 180 gives us a 0. Rotate to 270. Sine is the y, which is negative 1. 270 is negative 1. And we're to 360. We're back to 0 for the y. And so this is the graph of sine theta over this interval. So you notice that, again, the graph is sine, begins with S. So the graph of this is a sideways S. And notice it starts here, goes to the top, to 1, back to 0, back to negative 1, back up to 0. So 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. And notice the sine hits the theta axis at 3 spots, and 1 maximum, 1 minimum. But the cos has 2 maximums, 2 values on the intercept here with 1 minimum. Again, cos is a sideways C and sine is a sideways S. 5 marks if you have this graph right. And again, when you're doing a quiz, you pause your video and work out the answers, but you have to draw your grids first. Graph x equals cos theta over this interval. Well, pi over 2, negative, pi is 180, so 180 divided by 2, so that's a negative 90. And 2 pi is 180, so 2 times 180 is 360. So what I do, I change it to degrees so I can see what's happening, so I understand degrees better. So this is negative pi, so this is the negative pi over 2. This is 2 pi, so pi is in the middle, so that's 180. So pi divided by 2, that's 90. And this is 3 pi over 2, which is 3 times 90, which is 270. So I'm graphing from negative 90 to 360. So I'm graphing from here to here in degrees, if you think about it. That's negative 90, that's a 90, 180, 270, 360. And so we look at, again, looking at negative pi over 2, that's the same as a negative 90. Negative 90 is here, and we're graphing cos, so cos is a 0, which is right here. Now we look at graphing at 0. 0 for cos is x, which is 1. And we're graphing for 90. Pi over 2 is 90. 90 is here. And cos is 0. 90, pi over 2 is 0. And 180, rotate right around, 180 is pi, and that's cos is negative 1. 180 is negative 1. And 3 pi over 2 is 90. 3 times 90 is 270. So 270 is cos is 0. So 270 is a 0. And 2 pi is the same as 360. So 360 is cos is 1. So we're back to the 1. So we started here, went up. Notice we got 1. We go down to 0. We go down to negative 1. We're back up to 0. We're back up to 1. So there's the graph. So if you have all that graph correctly, give yourself 5 marks. Number 4, graph y equals sine theta over negative pi less than or equal to theta less than or equal to pi. Again, pi is 180, so that's a negative 180. And pi is 180, so it's positive. So that's a negative 2 pi. So that's in the middle is, so that's negative 360. So that's negative pi here. So that's negative pi over 2. And this is the negative 3 pi over 2. Because that's 90. That's negative 90, negative 180, negative 270, negative 360. And that's 2 pi. So this is pi. This is pi over 2. And this is 3 pi over 2. So we're graphing from negative pi to a pi. So a negative pi is a negative 180. So negative 180 is this way. And we're graphing y, so that's a 0. Y is 0. Remember, sine is the y. When we graph a negative 90, the y is negative 1. So we're right here. Negative 90 is negative 1. And we're graphing at 0. 0 for y, 0 degrees, y is 0. And we're graphing at 90. 90 is up here, and the y is 1. Y is 1 right here. 90 gives us 1. And we're going to, we got to go as far as 180, which is pi. 180 gives us a 0. Because remember, sine is the y. So there's the graph. So notice we started here, went down, up, to the middle, top. So notice we started at 0, but this time we went down to -1, up to 0, up to 1, back to 0. So if you have that graph correctly, give yourself 5 marks. Notice how important it is to use this diagram as a visual that I always draw to make sure I don't make mistakes. Now let's answer some questions. State each for cos theta, sine theta. What's the maximum value for both of these? The maximum value for cos is 1. The maximum value for sine is 1. The smallest value of cos is -1. The smallest value for sine is -1. The domain of all of these, you can continue on. Domain is that theta belongs to the real number. We'll call it R. Is domain. And the range is the values of theta. So the smallest value of theta is -1, less than or equal to. Now we can use cos theta less than or equal to 1. Or we can say if it's for sine, then this is sine theta. So the main thing I'm interested in is that the values of sine are equal to -1, equal to 1, and all the values in between. Because it's theta is your domain, that's your degrees or radians, and your range is numbers between and equal to -1 to a 1. So if you have all 4 of these right, give yourself 4 marks. Total on the page is 24. And let's continue to the next page. Now we look at the graph of y equals sine theta over -360 to 720. So that's a -360, so this is a -180. That's a -90. That's a -270, because there's intervals here of 90 degrees from this 0. And this is 360, so this is a positive 180. This is a positive 90. And this is a positive 270. So positive on this side, negative on that side. This is theta. And now add 90 on, you get 450. And if you add 90 on, you get 540. And if you add 90 on, you get 630. And if you add 90 again, you get 720. So again, 90 and 90 and 90. 90 on 2 is a 50. Yep. Perfect. Now, we have to draw our circle. So I'm going to use my circle as a guide. So this is the unit circle whose radius is 1. So that means that this point here is 1, 0. This point here is 0, 1. This point here, x is -1, y is 0. And this point here, x is 0, y is 1. And again, this is 0, this is 90, this is 180, this is 270, and this is back to 360, or we can go negative-wise. Let's start. Let's start at 0. I always like to start with 0 and see what happens. If the sign at 0 is 0, right here. And if you go to 90, 90 sign is the y, which is 1. So now we started at 0. We went to 1. Now we got to go back to 0. Oops, I marked that. Now we got to go down to -1. Then we go back to 0. We go up to 1. Then we go back to 0. We go back to -1. Go back to 0. Now if you go this way, because we went up here, we have to come on down through to get to -1. We come back to 0. We come back to 1. We come back to 0. So we go back to 0. Sorry, back to -1. up to 0, up to 1, back to 0. So you notice that if I keep tracing this out, it's like a snake, you know. It's just keeps going on and on and on. So notice between 0 and 360, you got one S. Between 360 and 270, you got another S. And between negative 360 and 0, you got another S. So that means the period of the sine theta is 360 degrees. So no matter where you go, if you went from here to here, notice you got a cos graph. Even if you went from here to here, you start at 1 and you end at 1, and that's a cycle. So now if you go from here to here, you go 360. If you go from here to here, is 360. If you go from 180 to 540, it's 360 degrees. It's one cycle. So you start at 0, you go down to negative 1, 0, 1, 0. So notice the sine graph cuts at the sine is a sideways S. It will cut at 3 places. So the period, it's 360 for sine. After 360 degrees, you will start the cycle over again. And if you got all this graph right, give yourself 6 marks. If you got the period is 360, give yourself another mark, a total of 7. And that's the review of this unit on graphing the cosine and the sine graph. And the more you draw, the better you get. And if you like my video, click the like button, subscribe button. Visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. That's the content on my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.